CargoWise Landside is deeply committed to revolutionizing landside logistics. With a complete enterprise system built for modern trucking and container drayage operators that includes proven drayage transportation management, digital rate and quote management, real-time container track and tracing, and on-demand truck, trailer, and container storage. Excellence in container drayage starts with the right software. Enhance transportation management, optimize shipment execution, and improve intermodal business operations with Trinium TMS, Draymaster, GeoStamp Track, and SecureSpace. To learn more, please visit cargowise.com/landside.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to LogTech Live, the last episode of LogTech Live for 2024. And also the last episode ever of LogTech Live. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. There's some news that I'll talk about at the end of the show about what is changing with this show. But little teaser, you're going to want to hear what we talk about at the end of the show. Welcome, everyone, especially my longtime viewers and attendees. Really appreciate all the support for the show. It's been another amazing year of guests in 2024. I'm not going to do the rundown of everything that happened in 24 because there's too much going on. There's too much to talk about. I'm not too big into the recap end of year stuff anyway. But did want to say happy holidays to everyone and happy new year in advance. I might go a little over today. I'm just putting that out there. There's just too much. My guests, we have too much to talk about. So I apologize in advance. Better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. TPM, we are now, I believe, 10 weeks out from TPM. I hopefully will see all of you in Long Beach, California. It's the 25th anniversary of TPM this year. We have an amazing program. Literally, I was just looking at it earlier this week. The Monday program alone is more substantial than most conferences have across their entire program. So, but it's not just Monday. We have 4 days of programming, including TPM Tech, which I will be obviously heavily involved in. If you have not registered yet and you want to register, all new registrants can use the code that's on the banner to get 20% off a ticket. I would highly encourage you to do that. Break Bulk 25 is also coming around the corner in April of 25. As usual, I will be there talking about technology as it relates to the break bulk and project cargo side of the business. You'll definitely want to come to New Orleans, join us there. It's always a great event. It really, every year it gets a little bit better. And next year is going to be no difference. We have a great team internally at the Journal of Commerce focusing on this part of the industry, and they just do an amazing job putting this show together. So definitely join us there. One last show to mention, Manifest, which is a couple weeks before TPM. I will be out in Las Vegas doing, I think as of now, I'm doing 2 sessions. There may be another one that pops up, but doing 2 very interesting sessions. I think I'm going to have JB Hunt. I have a railroad that is escaping my memory right now because it's Friday right before Christmas and my brain's not firing on all cylinders. But talking with a lot of interesting people on those 2 sessions. And Manifest is just a cool place to be. Tons of investors there, a lot of the tech community is there. So definitely join in Vegas. And if you're going to be there, I'll have time to meet up with people. So let me know and would love to catch up. Really quick, blended pledge. I haven't talked about this in a few weeks. If you're looking for something to donate to, if everyone in your life has all the presents they need and you really don't need to buy them anything more, which is, let's be honest, most of us these days, you want to give to something on someone's behalf, give to Blended Pledge. It makes sure that industry conferences are representative of the industry that we are in, and it's not just a bunch of white guys on stage. This helps support people who don't have the budget to travel, get asked to speak, get asked to attend, don't have the budget to travel. It's a great initiative by Sarah and the Let's Talk supply chain team. So make sure you give some donations to that for the holidays. Okay, news of the week. It used to be that this time of year was pretty slow, but not anymore. A couple days ago, DAT acquired a company called Trucker Tools. I actually had the CEO, Carrie Jablonski, on this show of Trucker Tools just a few weeks ago. was a great discussion. I had no idea this was in the works. Both these companies were at our inland conference speaking. Great to see both of them sort of coming together. It will be very interesting to see how this works. I think at a high level and sort of from the outside looking in, it makes a lot of sense for these two companies to come together. We covered sort of some of the context around why they're coming together and what it might lead to in this story. Definitely encourage you to check that out on joc.com. But this has definitely created a little bit of a buzz in the industry. Certainly, I think anything DAT does tends to get noticed, tends to be talked about. This particular generated a lot of buzz. Just go to LinkedIn, go to Twitter if you're interested in catching up on some of that. But a lot of interesting thoughts and comments on that. As I think time will tell whether this works, whether it's beneficial for both of the companies, and probably more importantly, how beneficial it is for the industry. In the short term, it certainly gives DAT access to the truck tracking data that Trucker Tools, which is started off as an app that drivers would download to get access to different amenities. So they'll now have data around something like 350,000 drivers. So very interesting again, but encourage you to read the story. Earlier in the week, there was another acquisition that was announced, a company called Cargo Sprint, which is based out of Atlanta, and they were facilitating payments as predominantly serving air cargo ground handlers and airlines, facilitate payments from forwarders to get cargo released, the air freight released at airports. Kind of a niche business, but they had really built it up to be quite substantial. They got an investment a few weeks ago from a private equity group, installed a new CEO, someone I know well, a guy named Caro Chrisman, who started a digital customs brokerage a few years ago that he sold to Amazon, that became a big part of Amazon's sort of global logistics and trade compliance tool set. He is now CEO of this company. And earlier this week, they announced the acquisition of a very well-known name in the container shipping space, Advent eModal, which itself was the combination of two companies that facilitated payment collection at ports. So a lot of the programs that we know well in the container shipping world, things like PurePass and some other detention demurrage kind of collection tools, those are all facilitated by Advent eModal. That company also is responsible for a lot of the appointment systems at terminals. All of that now is combined, and the thought process, Caro told me, is you have a company that's strong in payments, and it's a company that's strong in collection, and you have a company that's strong in air and a company that's strong in ocean, and merging them together, they're very complementary. So again, with these acquisitions, it's all about how it plays out and whether the promise of what they are together actually, happens when it's executed. So we'll wait and see, but very interesting, and a name that most people in the industry, Advent eModal, will recognize is now in new hands and part of Cargo Sprint. So very interesting to watch. Definitely catch up on that story. The last one I'll mention is a column I actually put together, or an analysis I put together yesterday about kind of the M&A, specifically in the truckload space, and specifically at tools that are sort of aimed at brokers, truckload brokers. So obviously the DAT news. The week prior to that, there was a company called Isometric Technologies that keeps a database of sort of carrier performance for brokers to use. They got acquired by Triumph Financial, which is the big payment and factoring company that's grown massively over the last decade. So another piece of acquisition earlier this year, Transfix sold its brokerage division to NFI to focus on the technology side that, again, is selling to truckload brokers. And then a whole bunch of other developments that I sort of point to, all kind of like set against this idea that AI is coming for a lot of the functions in the brokerage world. So definitely there's more to this than I'm going to be able to describe in 30 seconds. So just go to the story. It's up there on the page, and the links are all in the comments. and let me know what you think. So lots of truckload stuff on my brain today, which is a perfect lead in to my guest this week. Adam Wingfield is CEO of a company called Innovative Logistics Group, which is his own company, founder. Are you CEO or just founder? What do you describe yourself?
I'm just a people person. I just call myself the people leader.
I put up a thing on LinkedIn this week asking when does a founder stop calling themselves a founder and change their title to like what they do, and there was lots of across the board kind of perspective on it. So it's interesting to get your thoughts. Adam, it's awesome to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
We got introduced earlier this year at the beginning of the year, and I've been very grateful that introduction was made because it's been great to get to know you. You were a big part of Inland this past year. Give people a little bit of, before you talk about what Innovative is, give people a little bit of background on what you did and professionally and how it led up to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'm from a small town in South Carolina, Alcaloo, South Carolina. The zip code is 29001. It's legitimately like the first post office in South Carolina. It tells you how small that town is. Well, obviously growing up, I was around equipment, diesel, all that good stuff growing up. And I've always had a fascination with trucks, always. I remember I had a neighbor that he had a reefer. I remember he had like a 1982 Mac, and he had like, he had a reefer trailer that he would come home like maybe once a month. And just that would be probably like one of the most exciting times to see the neighbors and see the truck going down the highway. And just, it was just always been it. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to set up on a dining room table, just to like, instead of having like, china and dishes, I'd get all that stuff moving to the side, but I would have all my my Matchbox and my Hot Wheels trucks, and I would have my whole little scenario going on. So I was always fascinated by trucks, man. And I remember at 11 years old, I had the opportunity to get behind the wheel of a truck with my uncle one time, man. And I just starting a truck up that time, it just does something to your soul. So it's been in my blood ever since. So I had some unfortunate circumstances happen to me in my life, prior to the time I turned 21. And once I turned 21, the very first thing I decided to do was to get my CDL. That was as fast as I can get my CDL back at that time. I got my CDL when I turned 21, which was back in 2000, man, 25 years ago. I saw that face, but it was 25 years ago, man. But I mean, you got people doing the math like, damn, like, yeah, but it was 25 years ago, man. And at that point, I started off as a over the road driver. I was in a specialized division back then. We were doing heavy haul, did glass, which was the TPs going down the highway. Mm-hmm. Did that for a couple of years, but then I decided to become an owner operator. A couple of years after that, and the rest is history. Became owner operator, fleet owner. But then as I progressed, man, one of the things that I've always had a passion for, and the reason why I'm trying to compress this because I know we got 30 minutes, but I got a passion for people. I've always had a passion for coaching. I've coached kids at every level, whether it be football, soccer, basketball. Had the opportunity to coach them in a variety of different levels. I just love development, man. I'm just infatuated with development. I get this such a dopamine release in just developing people. And so, my passion was for trucks, but it wasn't necessarily for the trucks itself. I like driving a truck. Actually, it was my therapy. But what I liked more importantly was seeing people become successful as business owners within trucking. So, so moving forward, pushing back to about 2012 is when I really started the coaching piece and the consulting piece and helping small carriers, with the tools such as financial acumen, business literacy, profitability, understanding compliance, putting all those components into a development program and really teaching owner operators on how to be successful. And it's been a journey ever since. It's opened up avenues to be able to touch more people and to be able to help more people. But also I really, really see an awareness shift in the industry. And that's one of the things that I really, really, really enjoy.
So, I think what was really interesting from my first conversation with you was this idea that, and I see this, by the way, with a lot of software companies that I talk to, right? In a way, it's obviously doing totally different things, but it's the same problem is you get into business or you start a business thinking, I love this thing that I'm doing, whether it's writing code and building a product, or in the case of a driver, it's like, I love being out on the road. I love driving. And you don't necessarily automatically have the tools to like make that business successful outside of that thing that attracted you to it. Like not everybody is a born business owner, right? So I was really interested to understand what you were doing, because you were sort of helping people equip people with those tools to like actually make the thing that they love doing something that they could afford to do, right? Basically. So how did you how did you think about like what it was you wanted to do? Because coaching is like, you can't just tap people on the street and be like, hey, can I, how did you go about building this so that they knew what you were trying to do and kind of scale it in a way that made sense for you?
So it was really homegrown, local. As I was, operating my own fleet, it was really homegrown. I had a lot of people that were just infatuated with, what I did, in terms of just, oh man, you run a trucking company. Like, yeah, I'm running a trucking company. And then you get the word out a little bit, I've got such and such, or so-and-so, a friend of mine, he's looking to start a trucking company. Can he talk to you? And kind of started really, really, really at that level. And then I'll never forget, I had a conversation with one of my factoring folks at the time. I had a really, really good relationship with my factoring company. We were, on the phone, constantly, obviously. But then I started talking to my factoring representative and just, telling her exactly what I was doing. And she was like, wow, that's amazing. I'll never forget. She called me one day and she was like, I've got this young man who could really use your help. And can I give him your number and send him your way? So I was like, sure. So I called the young man and kind of went through some of the circumstances that he was going through, kind of guided him in the different areas. And then I was like, you know what, this might not be a bad approach. Mm-hmm. So then that factoring relationship started sending more and more and more and more and more people who needed the same support. And then as I did the research, and I'm a very data analytical type person, and I was doing research, in terms of trucking to the information that we had, but I just saw how many people that were failing in the trucking industry, what the turnover looked like. And, there's a lot of misconceptions around the word trucker. You got trucker, you got owner operator, you got truck driver. It's not all one.
Carrier. Yeah.
It's not all one and the same. And so many, everybody doesn't associate, the business side of it behind it. And you find a lot of people, it's just like with anything else, just because you got a cook that can make an amazing sandwich doesn't mean that he can start a sandwich company.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you've got a barber that can cut really, really good hair doesn't mean he can run a barbershop.
Right.
Business and action are two totally separate things. And success comes in when you're able to take the action, like you said, that you're passionate about, and then monetize it from a business perspective. And you find that in the trucking space, in which one thing that I found, because it's deregulated and the barrier to entry is so low, it's not like starting a airline company. Me and you couldn't start an airline company today. We've got to go through certain steps. There's a barrier to entry there. But the trucking industry, the barrier to entry is so low. At some point, it is a hindrance to long-term success for folks that don't take the proper guidance that they need out there. And that's kind of what drove me to it.
Cool. So I would say anyone who's out there who is in this position and needs help kind of understanding the business end of trucking, definitely reach out to Adam. So I have a million questions to ask you. I know we're not going to get through all of this, but we'll try to do it as fast as we can. So I would love to get your thoughts. What do you think the most misunderstood thing about drivers is from the rest of the industry? So I'm talking brokers, shippers, receiving facilities, anyone who's interacting with a driver directly or indirectly. What do they not understand the most about drivers?
I think the biggest misunderstanding, and I think that it fell upon me as well, even as a driver myself, when I first got started. The biggest misunderstanding is that it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. I think that a lot of times people think that, well, they may or they may not think, they may not know, but they don't understand what it's like to live on the road and visit home. So it's like, every night as a truck driver that you're out on the road, you're spending the night in your truck in a random parking lot that, you know, in a random environment in a state or city that you may or may not have ever been in before. I think people don't really understand the sacrifices that drivers go through. From a fact of sacrificing, like when I go back to my journey, my two daughters, I miss most of everything, right? I don't remember their first steps, first words, because I was out on the road.
Yeah, like a month at a time, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
yeah. I was always gone. I was always gone. I got horror stories about, you know, how much I was out there. But I don't think people understand the sacrifices that drivers have to make. And not only do they have those sacrifices that they make from just a personal sacrifice, but they also are sacrificing every time you get behind that wheel, every time you start that truck up, man, and put it in gear, man, it's not guaranteed that you're gonna, go home. It's one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. I think that a lot of people don't understand it. A lot of people, the biggest misconception from my perspective is the actual sacrifices and the things that is required to get behind the wheel of a truck.
Yeah. I'll just add really quickly on that. I think one of the things, having been exposed to the freight industry over 20 years, and probably the last 10, especially focusing more on the domestic side of things, is something I'd never take for granted anymore that I used to, is when I'm driving on a highway and I'm going 65 or whatever, and there's two trucks at various points and they're also going the same speed as me, I feel totally comfortable and safe. And you take for granted, when you don't actively think about it, you take for granted how much skill and attention and diligence and preparation it takes for them to drive in a way that makes us feel comfortable, even though their vehicle is, 20, 30 times bigger than ours. So you have to, because you can go on autopilot when you're on the road with drivers, and as a not even as someone in the industry, but just anyone. And I think it's good to actively think like, oh, wow, think about what it took for that driver to get to that position where you don't even think about how hard it is for them to make it easy for you to drive. Right. Yeah. So, okay, flipping it around. What do you think drivers don't understand well enough about the rest of the industry?
I think that the dynamic of it. I think that one of the things over my 25 years in this industry, and I've had the opportunity to kind of play in a couple of different roles, from 3PL to obviously founding my own company. I think that when you're behind the wheel, I think it's you don't understand the complexity involved in just picking up a load from A to B. I think that for me, a lot of drivers. And to nobody's fault of their own, because you're driving, you're out there to make a living, you're out there to provide for your family. Your focus is on what it takes for you to do so. But to understand the complexities from, we talked about this prior to the show, from to start up from the intermodal side, and how it all comes downstream to almost like the drivers in the final mile phases of the actual transaction. There's so much that goes on behind closed doors. I remember when I worked for a 3PL for a little bit of time, and really just the work that goes into call a shipper to try to get freight. I think that just to create a load that goes on a load board, that I might argue back and forth about that particular load, but just to have that load and create that load, what does it take behind the scenes in order to just even get that freight to put on the load board? And I think that a lot of drivers don't understand. You got drivers that understand the process, but for the most part, I think that there's a lot that don't understand how much goes on behind the scenes, how much work it is behind the scenes. I think there's good players and bad players in anything, in any environment. But I think ultimately, the awareness is a little lack in terms of what goes on behind the scenes, from a 3PL perspective, 4PL, all the way downstream to the entire supply chain of it. I think it's just not really kind of understood in that.
That's a great point. I think everybody is a little bit, I think in general, there's a little bit more empathy across the board about like what role other people play, but it's really hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like if you're a broker on a floor, like you're caught up in that thing you need to do at that moment, that day. You're not putting yourself in the shoes of a driver. Likewise, driver, you're focused on the road. You're focused on, am I meeting the appointment time, delivery time. You're not thinking, oh, wow, that broker probably is going through some difficult times right now because he had to take X% less than he wanted to for this, It's a great point. I think we could all use a little more empathy. I mean, certainly at our events, I try to bridge those worlds a little bit so people kind of step outside their day-to-day and think, oh, I didn't know that's what a driver faces.
Right.
So that's one way I think we can all do it. Okay. I'm moving fast. Sorry. We could just talk about any one of these things for 30 minutes, but I'm trying to move fast. You mentioned it earlier, right? Like there's different types of roles that if I decide to be a driver, am I a company driver? Do I want to work for a big fleet, a small fleet? Do I want to be an owner operator? Like what does that decision tree look like once you decide you got your CDL, you want to be a driver, you have a fair amount of experience, you have enough experience where you can make that decision?
Yeah.
Why would I go one way or another?
It just depends on a person, man. I think it depends. I think that for me, and I'll never forget for me, I've always been this way. I guess that's the reason why, I started my own company. I always had a sense of independency, and I always had a sense of I guess an entrepreneurship before I became an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be out on my own, do my own thing. Not having somebody, standing over me for, whatever long that may be. But I think that from a driver perspective, and it's funny, and you're probably going to laugh at this, but I'm going to tell you the main reason, one of the main reasons why I became an owner operator so quick. One of the main reasons why I became an owner operator so quick is because I wanted to drive a faster truck. My truck was governed at 62 miles an hour. And you just got to imagine you're doing 62 miles an hour, top speed, foot to the floor. Yeah. I was like, man, I got to drive something faster, man. I've got to get back. I've got to do something faster. And then the crazy thing is, as soon as I got my own truck and I started driving faster, then I started slowing down again because I started realizing, man, I'm blowing diesel smoke out like it is nothing. But no, in all seriousness, I think it comes down to the person. Like, you got people who just want to come to work, clock in, clock out, go home. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But then you got people that come to work that be like, you know what? I want to work my way up the ladder. I want to work my way up the chain. And it's the same thing in the industry. You got people that just want to drive and go home. You want to drive for a good company, got good benefits, bump a dock every day and go home at the end of the day. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then you got people that want to control their own destiny within it. So I think that it all depends on the person. Not everybody is born to lead. Not everybody is born to be out on their own. Some people need heavy direction. Some people need no direction. So I think it really depends on the person. I really do.
Yep. Yeah, I think I think that's a great way of putting it. There's a sense that like every driver wants to be like totally independent, but you're saying that's not necessarily the case. Some people
it's not. It's just like with people, it's just people, everybody has their own different way about going about things.
So let's shift gears and talk about tech. The show is LogTech Live, so we got to talk about technology. So I don't write a lot about this stuff because this is less impactful for the audience that I tend to write for, which is more on the shipper kind of broker side. But there's a ton of in-cab technology, right? Like telematics, ELDs obviously came in 2017, the mandate, but a lot of companies had ELDs prior to that. What do drivers think about the amount of technology that is used in cab? Is it a good thing that the truck kind of looks almost like a computer with a steering wheel, or no?
It's dangerous. Okay. I think that so I'll say like this. So it's just like with anything else. You got people who it doesn't take much to lose trust. And I think the industry has a trust gap issue. So when you look at all of the additional technology, it's just one of those observatory fields that that one may find. It's okay. Well, we got ELDs now. We got AI dash cams. So it's so many different complexities in it. From a safety perspective, though, it does bring a little bit of concern because I'll say this: like what I see, and I got behind the wheel of a truck the other day, and it was a 2024 KW, and the amount of tech that's in that truck now compared to 2005 W900 is so different, but it's also a distraction. And the thing that concerns me the most is that when companies move, and I know Canada is fighting this right now. They're fighting it tooth and nail, where the country is forcing mandates on automated versus manual transmission. So this is what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna tell you why I'm telling you this. So the amount of skill and amount of attention that's required to stay on top of a gear pattern, especially when you're operating through various terrains and things like that, you downshift and upshift. There's a lot of attention that you got to stay on.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff in the trucks that's automated now, including the transmission. Transmission's automated now that obviously you can sit in traffic now, and there's certain trucks that'll creep by themselves with no need on that. But when you add in all of this additional technology, it lowers that, to me as a driver, it lowers my sense of needing to be alert.
That intuition.
It does. It doesn't.
Yeah,
I'm like, well, shoot, the truck can actually move in traffic for me. I can just take my wheels off of that, and I can pick up my cell phone and I can catch. So I think that with a lot of technology, when it comes to that, we got advanced technology. Look, planes are much more advanced now than they were back in the late 90s. But I just think that just from a skill perspective, that's the only concern that I have. I just concerned that it just kind of waters down some of the skill that is out there, and I just hope that we just maintain safety. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
That's a super interesting point. I just read it earlier this week. This just popped in my head as you were talking about this. I read a thread about somebody who had met a software founder in his early 20s, super sharp guy. And this guy who's writing the thread is a little older. He's like probably our age. And he was noticing that the software founder, incredibly intelligent, but was having trouble kind of finishing thoughts and having trouble like finding the right word to say about something. And he sort of poked around and found that the guy was using ChatGPT for a lot of different things. And so the part of the brain that was being used, that we use to like finish our thoughts, that generation is now essentially leaning on that tool. And he compared it like, look, 50 years ago, we didn't have, before calculators were involved, we mentally had to figure things out. Yeah. We stopped, like none of us have that part of our brain where we do complex mathematical equations anymore, because we just have a calculator do it. It's a better way to do it, right? So he's like, your brain gets trained to not have to do certain things. So that's, I think it's that same kind of spectrum that you're talking about. Very, very interesting. So from a driver perspective, how much do you think that in-cab stuff, how much do they perceive to be about their experience versus other people benefiting from understanding what's going on with the truck, what's going on with driver behavior?
I mean, obviously your GPS is just about the only thing that really it's in there that really gives you that, feeling that it's actually supportive and it actually works on my behalf. But things like in-cab facing cameras, outside facing cameras. There's some, collision mitigation systems in there that actually is a benefit. Obviously, having cameras on the side of the truck and provide collision mitigation, blind spot monitoring, and things of that nature. That kind of gives you that sense that it is actually there to help from a safety perspective.
Yep.
Which, we had VORAD when I was behind the seat, which was very, very similar. It was an in-cab technology. It was a radar. And I think that, something that more similar is integrated cameras now to make it a little bit more different. But I think that some of it, obviously some of it has, if it used correctly, is definitely a benefit. I think technology, anytime you integrate technology, and technology is designed to, it's to enhance, whether it's enhancing safety, whether it's enhancing quality of life, whether it's enhancing our overall day-to-day operations, it's put in there as an enhancement, as long as we can trust the technology. Yep. And I think that, when you look at truck tech, just specifically, there's only but so far you can go with technology where it's actually helping me, when it comes down to that, outside of safety. As long as it's, trigger and handle to safety, I think that that's the biggest contribution when it comes down to it. But the other stuff, you kind of wonder, like, why is this here? Like, why is this here? Why is this there? And I think that, when you look at, even when I look at in-cab cameras now, I remember when they started in-cab cameras, it was one thing, but now we've got AI enhanced cameras where there's like, okay, well, the AI is going to tell when you're on your phone. The AI knows when you're falling asleep. The AI knows if you're tired. The AI knows when you need to take a break. So I think there's a lot of things that are starting to turn the water when it comes to technology, where it might start juggling that comfort zone, for a lack of a better term. But there's a gift and a curse when it comes down to technology. I think any driver can appreciate some, and then there's drivers that can appreciate none. I think that's just kind of how it kind of plays out.
I mean, I just think drivers are sort of in a position where they're not really like controlling their own destiny when it comes to this. Like most of it is regulation, some of it is commercial pressure, but really like ultimately they have to adapt to whatever other people outside the cab decide.
Oh yeah.
Needs to be on the truck. So yeah, like my favorite phrase is you can want to play a different game, but you have to play the game that exists. Right. And so I think it's really, I'm sure this is something you talk about with them a lot, is like, you have to figure out how to like thrive within this world, even if you don't necessarily like all the aspects of it. So.
Yeah.
So another part of this is carrier vetting. So obviously cargo fraud, cargo theft has been a major topic of discussion in our industry for the last 2 years, I would say. It was a big source of discussion at Inland this past year. And one of the elements that the industry has long tried to use is carrier vetting programs, but there's or systems, but there's downsides to this, right? Like if I do 1,000 deliveries perfectly, but I have one problem, I get flagged, right? And that flag doesn't go away, and that throws up a flag when someone is using one of these systems. What do drivers think about this? Have they embraced it? Like it's like another one of these things that they're not going away. They may get better, but they're not going away. How does a driver think about those?
I don't think it's embraced as the industry would like. And the reason why is because it's not balanced. Like it's so heavy towards vetting the drivers, but drivers don't have a tool to vet brokers.
Yeah,
with that same level of intensity. Drivers, there have been so many owner operators and small carriers that have been stiffed on no pays from brokers, double brokering, things of that nature that are taking place, that you're asking a lot. And the way I see it is we're asking a lot from a broker to protect a driver that doesn't have the same liabilities when it comes down to it. Mm-hmm. But the driver doesn't have the same tools to protect themselves as well. They don't have the same instant access when it comes down to being able to vet and thread brokers out, especially in this marketplace where with so many tech tools available, there's no solution for them, that's like that. You can go right now and there's so many tools out there that can help brokers vet drivers, right? So many tools to help brokers vet drivers. But from a driver perspective, or actually an owner operator and fleet owner perspective, what is a universal standard, right? What is a universal standard for that community? So I think that when it comes down to vetting tools, when it comes to embracement, I don't think that you're going to get much embrace when it's not balanced. It just doesn't work.
So how do you bring balance? And I mean, we can look at this on the vetting side. We can look at it all across the board. Like, to your point, a driver gets in the cab, they have a load to pick up and a load to deliver. And, whatever some of the ancillary things around it are. But other than that, they don't have a huge window into what the rest of the supply chain looks like. So how can tech kind of help balance that imbalance right now that exists between the way a driver and a truck is scrutinized versus the driver's ability to sort of look, more broadly at what the other parties in that system?
Well, I'll say this. So tech to me is the tech itself is an inanimate object with mm-hmm. no life behind it, with no person, with no reason. Tech just does a job.
Yeah.
What I've found in the space, because obviously being in tech myself, what I found is the ones that do the best, and when technology has the best opportunity to do exactly what you're saying, is when the CEO and that founder comes out in front of the technology. So comes out and is having communities active on social media platforms. When CEOs come out and talk about what their technology is doing, engage back and forth with their audiences. We're in a social media era where we as a people have never been this closely connected. I can literally cuss out Elon Musk right now if I wanted to, and just I could do whatever I want to do because that's the tech has been enabled to do that. So I think that my point behind that is that if a tech company out there that's a vetting system, a platform out there that wants to really, like you said, wants to bridge the gap and kind of get out in front of your technology, don't be afraid to set out
Talk
and do
about
these
it.
things. Talk about your technology. Invite yourself in these platforms where drivers live. There are Facebook groups, there are Discords where you'll find a lot of drivers in there. Don't be afraid. Don't stop hiding behind your technology. Get out in front of your technology and be proud of your technology and be proud of that and be able to have a dialogue back and forth where someone who might disagree with what you're doing. So I think that to me is one of the biggest challenges, and I think it'll be one of the biggest things that you can see that can help change that.
Yeah, there's a guy, Ryan Schreiber, you might know him at Metaphora, talks about you can't just invest in tech. You have to explain to your people why you're investing in it. It shouldn't be for them to figure out why you've invested in something. And that, I think the same goes if you are trying to sell something to a community that's maybe not even your customers, it's really incumbent upon you to like explain why it's important and what you're doing, and that, you're trying to come from a good place. So, okay. I did want to get to this. It had nothing to do with trucking, but we've had some interaction on the NBA. How do we fix the NBA in like a minute? Even the players, I saw LeBron came out this week and like, we're all shooting too many threes. Like they acknowledge it's a problem.
Dude, so like a couple weeks ago, my hometown team, Charlotte Hornets, they set a record for I don't know, like missed 3-point attempts was 70 in a game.
Oh my God.
And so like the game is so far gone right now. And you see all of the older players that kind of chime in. Shaq talks about it all the time. Kenny talks about it all the time. Like it's not cerebral anymore. It's, it's so ISO related with 5 out, or 4 in, 1, 4 out, 1 in. It's just when the game moved around away from the physicality, there's no skill anymore. Everybody's a 3-point shooter. So you don't have that. And I'm going to try to run this up real fast. So everybody's a 3-point shooter right now. You don't have the skill positions that you fear. You don't have the power forward that has that pivot like a Zach Randolph. You don't have a small forward who's a slasher on the wing. You don't have that 2 guard that's truly a shooting guard. You don't have that point guard that's really the distributor of the game in that cohesive environment no more. And I don't know how to fix it. I'm not going to lie to you, man. And I'm going to say this, on air. I have not watched an NBA game all year from start to finish. I have not.
And you would have been a diehard at some point. I think I've watched maybe parts of 2 games this year. I'm in the same boat. So.
I was a season ticket holder for a couple of years with the teams. I paid a lot of money for my ticket, so I haven't been to a game or watched a game in I don't know how long.
So I agree. I think the homogenization of the positions has made it just boring. I disagree. I think it's actually really skilled. I think they're overly skilled in a way. Like it was at a very specific number of things, right?
Yeah.
And it's totally marginalized the big guys, totally marginalized the really small guys who used to Muggsy would never have a place in the game today because he couldn't get a shot up. He couldn't get shots up, in the way that the game demands it. I mentioned a couple fixes. I think the fix that would solve this all is you're only allowed 20 3-point shots, or let's say 25 max for the whole game. And you can choose when to use them. You can use them all in the first quarter if you want, but end of the game, if you shoot outside the 3-point line, it's only worth 2.
That's a good idea.
And that maybe focuses teams on being more, focusing on inside out a little bit more. But I don't know. That seems to me, but I don't know if it'll ever happen. We could do 30 minutes on what's wrong and how to fix the NBA. Last question. This is my trademark question for every guest. Who's your favorite band or musician? And you have to tell me why.
Goody Mob.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, Goody Mob.
Lesser known Outcast buddies, right? Yeah, of course.
Goody Mob Goody Mob saved my life, man. Goody Mob got me through depression. They had there was their Soul Food album and the Still Standing album came during a time of my life where I lost my dad, who was like so close to me, and like it. Like I met CeeLo Green a couple of times, and I had the opportunity to kind of like talk to him about it, But Goody Mob is hands down will always be hands down my favorite of all time. Never be another.
They were amazing. That's a great one. All right. That's a good one to sign off the year with.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
wholeheartedly endorse. Cool. Yeah, I had their album in college. So yeah, that's an excellent one. All right. Well, what's the best way to reach out to you, Adam? I'm sure people want to get in touch.
And you can, touch me here on LinkedIn. You can find me at Adam L. Wingfield on Instagram, at Adam L. Wingfield on Twitter. I'm very active on those two platforms. You can also find me on, I started a TikTok account, but I really don't use it. You can follow me there if you want to as well. But those are the easiest way to get in contact with me. Shoot me a DM. Let me know what you want to talk about, and let's get to it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, happy holidays.
You too.
Happy New Year. Great to catch up after all this time. So thanks, Adam. All right, quickly. We're running out of time here, but I've got 2 dad jokes this year, or this week. It's the last show of the year, so you get a bonus dad joke. I've been saving this one for a while. What band do you listen to when you're looking for a new job? LinkedIn Park. Yes, no. I personally love that. It's like a perfect dad joke / corporate dad joke. All right. Second dad joke. Came across this one on Instagram. Love this one. My son's a huge Harry Potter fan, so gotta give the bonus dad joke. What did Harry Potter say at the gas station? I'll try to use some imaginary prop here. Expensive petroleum. Either of those any good? I don't know. I have no idea. It's tough without a crowd to like interact with, but hopefully, I love the LinkedIn Park one, but I've been saving that one for months. In any case, thank you so much to Adam. Thank you to the whole Let's Talk Supply Chain team for making this so fun. As I mentioned earlier, in January, there's some changes coming to the show. We are rebranding it. It's no longer going to be called LogTech Live. It's going to be called TPM Today. Most of the conversations are going to revolve around things that we would talk about at TPM, a lot of tech, a lot of international logistics. We will definitely still touch on things like we talked about today, truckload, LTL, the surface side of the industry. But we're rebranding. We're also moving to the second and fourth Fridays of every month. So adjust your calendar. So the next show is January 10th. I have a great guest lined up for the inaugural show of TPM Today, but super excited. But with that, thank you to everyone who attends all our shows. I really appreciate it. Happy holidays, happy New Year, happy holidays to the Let's Talk Supply Chain team too. Really, it's so great to work with you all. It's a delight. Really, thank you so much for all the work you do. Happy New Year, everyone, and see you in January.